Hi everyone, happy Sockmas. Hope you enjoyed the WebSockets challenge yesterday. Today we're going to be doing something slightly different. We're going to be diving into the realms of cryptography. My name is Melanie, or Melmos if you're familiar with the DevSecOps content at TryHackMe. And I'll be helping you walk through the challenge today. Let's go. Today's challenge is called Even If We're Horribly Mismanaged, There Will Be Not Sad Faces on Sockmas. We have a nice little haiku or poem at the beginning. It's the mayor said the glitch he said was saying. The people of Wareville, they're browsing, he's spying. That sounds like him, Skitty said. Back to work then. Seems like something is happening with a site or a browser. So it's a quiet morning in the town of Wareville, a wholesome town where cheer and tech come together. Skitty is charged to protect the gift scheduler, the service elves used to schedule all the presents to be delivered in Wareville. She assigned Glitch to the case to make sure the site is secure for G-Day, aka Gift Day. In the meantime, Mayor Mauer works tirelessly, hoping to not only ruin Christmas by redirecting presents to the wrong addresses, but also to ensure that Glitch is blamed for the attack. After all, Glitch's warnings about the same vulnerabilities Mayor Mauer is exploiting make the hacker an easy scapegoat. All right. So what are we learning today? We're learning about self-signed certificates, man-in-the-middle attacks, and using Burp Suite proxy. Certified to Slay. Fan of the title. We hear a lot about certificates and their uses, but let's start dissecting what certificate is. Okay, so the components of a certificate. A certificate is comprised of a key pair. You have the public part and the private part. The public key is used to encrypt the data, and the private key is used to decrypt it. Usually the server or the site that holds the certificate has the private key and shares a public key with the user. There's also metadata related to the certificate. This is information about the certificate holder. The period, also known as crypto period, so it gives you the validity of a certificate, when it was issued and when it's due to expire. Usually crypto periods for certificates, they tend to be between 1 year and 2 years. You also have information about the certificate authority, which I think is mentioned later on. And you have signature and hashing algorithms, which are used for validation verification. Sign here, trust me. So what's a certificate authority? A CA, or certificate authority, is a trusted entity that issues certificates. For example, Global Sign, Let's Encrypt, DigiCert are very common ones. The browser trusts these entities and performs a series of checks to ensure that it is a trusted CA. Yep, that's exactly that. It's a third-party entity that you use for vetting or vouching the validity of a certificate. So if the company that owns this site uses a certificate and puts their stamp on it, that's great. But there's no third-party validation as to whether that certificate is valid. So any other person could impersonate that company and pretend to be generating a certificate as well. So it's really important to have a CA signed certificate when you're navigating websites that have critical operations like transactions or financial data. So a breakdown of what happens with a certificate. You have a handshake. Your browser requests a secure connection, and the website responds by sending the certificate. In this case, it only requires a public key and the metadata. So as we said earlier, the public key is the only one that's shared. The private key never leaves the server or the service that's owning the certificate or the site. Then you have the verification part, where the browser checks the certificate for its validity by checking if it was issued by a trusted CA. If the certificate hasn't expired or been tampered with and the CA is trusted, then the browser gives a green light. There are different types of checks you can do. Check them here. So I recommend you having a read of that link. It gives the 3 types of validations that you can find. That's EV, extended validation, organization validation, and domain validation, which is the lowest form of validation. Depending on the level of security a site requires, you can find all three types. The highest form of validation being extended validation. It tends to be slower. So you don't really perform that type of validation when you're implementing a service that requires high demand, or it's used very very often. So APIs, for example, you don't tend to see extended validation, but if it's a site where there's a payment rail or you're performing a transaction, they tend to have extended validation because it's critical data that you're handling. Then you have the key exchange. The browser uses the public key to encrypt the session key, which encrypts all communication between the browser and the website. The website uses the private key to decrypt the session key, which is symmetric. Now that both the browser and the website share a secret key, which is the session key, unique to the session user, we have established a secure and encrypted communication. And that's pretty much what makes HTTPS secure. Thanks to certificates, we can now have authentication, encryption, and data integrity. So that's kind of TLS in a nutshell, really. Self-signed certificates versus trusted CA certificates. The process of acquiring a certificate with a CA is long. You create the certificate and send it to the CA to sign it for you. If you don't have the tools and automation in place, this process can take weeks. Self-signed certificates are signed by an entity, usually the same one that authenticates. For example, if Wareville owns the gift scheduler site and they create a certificate, they could be the ones to sign it, and therefore is self-signed. Yep, that's right. So if a company doesn't have a workflow to automate the process of generating a certificate, it can be quite painful for teams that are developing products that could be internal and development stage, and sometimes it's a bit of an overkill. So you tend to see a lot of self-signed certificates in development or sandbox stage web apps that are still in a testing stage, or they're in a network that's sort of air-gapped, is not open to the public internet. So it's quite common to see self-signed certificates there. However, if a site is open to the public internet, then you'll always see, or hopefully see, CA signed certificates. Browsers generally do not trust self-signed certificates because there is no third-party verification. The browser has no way of knowing if the certificate is authentic or if it's being used for malicious purposes. Yep. Trusted CA certificates, on the other hand, are verified by a CA, which acts as a trusted third party to confirm the website's identity. Yep. And for reference, when you need to generate a certificate, you generate what's called a CSR, a certificate signing request. And after you generate the CSR, you then send it to your CA of preference, global sign, for example. You usually have to raise a purchase order because this costs money. And then global sign would sign that CSR and generate a certificate with a signature and the validation performed by them, and they'll send it back to the company. This could take around a week to raise the purchase order and to receive the certificate back. And then after the company receives the certificate, then they can sort of perform their deployment with that certificate and do testing to make sure that everything's all right. If, again, you're developing something in a sandbox environment, this is quite an overkill and it costs money and it slows down teams, so it makes sense to sort of use a self-sign. But it's a really, really bad practice to use a self-sign certificate for public-facing sites. Really bad practice. CA issued certificates sometimes take a long time. Oh, there you go. We just spoke about this. If it's an internal air-gap environment with no connection to public internet, self-sign is fine. Otherwise, it defeats the purpose of a certificate, which is to secure communication between both parties and trust the data being exchanged. Yeah, that's right. This topic is quite cool. If you want to learn some of the methods that have been developed over the years to figure out if a certificate is valid or not, there's also the concept of certificate transparency, where CAs have sort of opened up public logs where you can vouch where certificates are coming from, and the CAs are out there. So something to dive into after the challenge today. Right, what are we using today? So today we're using the attack box and we're using a VM. Okay, let's start the machine. And I'll start the attack box. All right, that's our attack box and VM started. We can go ahead and jump into the story now. How Mayor Malware disrupts G-Day. There are less than 2 weeks until G-Day, and Mayor Malware has been planning its disruption ever since Glitch raised its self-signed certificate when IoT to Max Kitty during a security briefing. His plan is near perfect. He will hack into the gift scheduler and mess with the delivery schedule. No one will receive the gift destined for them. G-Day will be ruined. Evil laugh. Okay, so there seems to be a gift scheduler site that's using a self-signed certificate, and Mayor Malware wants to disrupt it. Before we start, there's some preparation we need to do. He wants to make sure that his tracks are well covered to prevent any DNS logs from alerting his enemies. He will resolve the gift scheduler's fully qualified domain name locally on his machine. FQDN is full domain, the URL with its components. Okay, so let's add this command to the host file. It will detect your attack box IP, so you can just go ahead and copy that. Start a terminal. Okay, let's check it's been added to the host file. There you go. We can see at the end of the file it's been added. Now Mayor Malware can navigate to the gift scheduler website without leaving a trace on Wareville's DNS logs. Let's open Firefox and navigate to the gift scheduler.thm. And we'll be presented with the following warning page. Okay, so if we start Firefox, there we go. We can now navigate to the site. We see the warning sign here. If you click on Advanced, Gift Scheduler THM uses an invalid security certificate. The certificate is not trusted because it is self-signed. So, like we mentioned earlier, browsers by default don't trust self-signed certificates, hence the warning sign. You can click on the View Certificate button if you want to see more information about the certificate. So, remember when we mentioned the metadata? Here we can see the country, the locality, the organization. So if you go to the issuer name, we can see that the organization that issued the certificate is THM, hence why it's self-signed. You can also see the validity period when it expires. There's also some information about the public key. In this case, is using the RSA algorithm, which is pretty common to see within certificates. And you also have some fingerprints and signatures, which are used for validation and verification purposes. Okay. We can click Advanced, View Certificate, which we did. Mayor Malware can believe his luck. This is evidence that the glitch was speaking the truth. The gift scheduler web server uses a self-signed certificate. This means that the townspeople and all the elves will be used to clicking on the Accept, Risk, and Continue button to access the website. To the point has become a habit. Okay, so let's go ahead and accept the risk and continue. Isn't that what life's about? And we're greeted with the gift scheduler menu. Welcome to the gift scheduler in Wareville. Request or manage your gifts here. Okay. We have some Mayor Malware credentials. Let's copy the username. If you click Start, you should be prompted with the login menu. And the password is, of course, Garbage Day. Very fitting. Never. Okay, so it seems like all Mayor Malware can do is request a gift. With his credentials, he can't do anything but send a gift request, so it seems like the profile we have, all we can do is wish. As if he ever were to do such a sickening sweet gesture. To carry out his evil plan, he will need to sniff some of admin credentials, maybe some of the elves' passwords, or even if he gets lucky, Martha Mayweather's account. To sniff the elves' traffic, the next step will be to start a proxy on his machine and route all of Wareville's traffic to it. This way, the mayor will be in the middle between the townspeople and the gift scheduler. This position will allow him to sniff all requests forwarded to the sickening website. Such a sickening website, honestly. Allowing people to wish for gifts? I mean, that's heinous. Let's start the Burp Suite proxy by typing burp in the terminal. A new window will open. Okay, so we're going to set up a proxy listener to capture the traffic and do a man-in-the-middle attack. To start burp, you can either go to the web tab in the applications directory, or you can just type burp in the terminal, and that should load Burp Suite. You can go ahead and click next and start burp. While it loads, let's check for the guide instructions. Once Burp Suite loads, we will select proxy and then toggle off the intercept on. Finally, let's open the proxy settings to set up a new listener on our attack box IP address. Okay. Feel free to close all of the pop-ups you get when you start burp. If we go to the proxy tab, we can see the intercepts on. Let's toggle that off. Otherwise, it's going to be quite inconvenient because every time you navigate to the site or you send a request, you have to manually forward it, and we don't want that. We can go to the proxy settings tab here, and let's go ahead and add the attack box as a listener. So in the specific address option, we can see that's already picked up our attack box IP, so we can select that one. And now we need to add the port, which in this case would be 8080. You can click OK, and we can see that it's been added there as a listener. The previous settings windows will get displayed, and we can see that the new listener has been added on the proxy listeners list. It highlights there that each installation of burp generates its own CA certificate that proxy listeners can use when negotiating TLS connections. This means that proxy is using its own self-signed certificate generating by burp, which is pretty handy for Mayor Malware. Mayor Malware rubs his hands together gleefully, as we can read in the yellow box in the screenshot above. Burp Suite already comes with a self-signed certificate. The users will be prompted to accept it and continue, and Mayor Malware knows they will do it out of habit, without even thinking of verifying the certificate origin first. The G-Day disruption operation will go off without a hitch. Step from the middle. Now that our machine is ready to listen, we must reroute all of Wareville's traffic to our machine. Mayor Malware has a wonderful idea to achieve this. He will set his own machine as a gateway for all other Wareville's machines. Okay, so we need to add Mayor Malware's machine, which is ours, as a gateway to the host file. So similar like we did earlier, let's copy that command and add it to our host file. There you go. If we verify it's been added, we can see that the gateway has been added at the end of the file, so we're good to go. This will divert all of Wareville's traffic, usually routed through the legitimate Wareville's gateway to Mayor Malware's machine, effectively putting him in the middle of the request. Note, in practice, the adversary can launch a similar attack if they can control the user's gateway, and their attack can easily succeed against websites not using properly signed certificate. This attack requires more than adding an entry into the host file. However, this task aims to emulate part of the attack. Makes sense because we're using the same machine, but you get the idea. The last step, we must run a custom script to simulate the user's request to the gift scheduler. Okay, so there seems to be a script in this directory, in the room's AOC 2024 day 14. That's gonna simulate users logging into the gift scheduler. Let's run the script. While that loads, we can check for the questions. What is the name of the CA that has signed the gift scheduler certificate? We saw this earlier. If we go back to the gift scheduler site, you can check for certificate information at any given point. It doesn't have to prompt you for a warning sign. If you click on the icon right next to the URL, it's usually a lock. And in this case, it's going to show you this menu. Connection is not secure, but if it's using a certificate that it has been signed by a CA, you can also view the certificate. You'll probably have to look for a button that says more information or certificate information, depending on the browser you're using. So if we click on the connection is not secure and more information, it should prompt you with this menu where you can click view certificate. And here we have the same menu when we open the view certificate when we got the warning sign. So if we want to find out the CA that issued the certificate, if you go to the issuer information section where it says organization, that usually gives you the hint. So in this case, it's THM, like we saw earlier. There you go. And the next questions are, look inside the post request in the HTTP history. What is the password for Snowball Elf? It's also asking for credentials to authenticate and get the flag in the Elf scheduling page. Okay, so let's go back and see our results. We can close the certificate menu. We can also close the proxy settings menu. And if we go back to Burp and click the HTTP history tab, we can see that has captured some post requests. So this is probably the script attempting to log into the site. If we click on the first post, for example, we can see that there's some admin credentials here. We can see an elf, green elf. Marta Mayweather's account. And we can see Snowball Elf here. So it was asking for their password earlier. If we copy that. There you go. And now we need to log in into the gift scheduler site as an elf to get one of the flags. So let's just use Snowball Elf as an example. Let's log out here. Snowball Elf. And there you go. We have the flag here. Okay. It seems like the elves can do any admin activity. All they can see is the gifts that have been scheduled so far. So I think Mayor Mauer is not really interested in elves' credentials. What is the password for Marta Mayweather's account? Okay, we got her details earlier in one of the post requests. There it is. So the account is Marta Mayweather. If we log out from the elf's account, and the password is Holly Jolly Suckmas. Let's type this into the... Nice, correct. And then the last one. With Marta Mayweather's username and password, he can finally access the administrative console for the gift scheduler. G-Day is cancelled. What is the flag shown on the admin page? Let's log in as Marta Mayweather. We can see the flag there. Can you cancel G-Day? So it was a trap after all. They got you. And let's see what else you can do. You can manage gifts requests. It seems like somebody requested for a firmware update. I think everybody deserves that, so I'm gonna approve that. It also seems like somebody wished to be a Saiyan, have ninja skills and some popcorn, so I think they deserve that as well. I do hope they get what they wish for and they become a Saiyan with ninja skills and have some popcorn. I don't know who requested that, but they seem pretty cool. All right, now that we have the flag, let's copy that and put it in the answer box. Awesome. And there you have it, folks. That's all of the answers. If you enjoyed this task, feel free to check out Burp Suite's module. Absolutely. It's a pretty comprehensive module. It shows you how to use the many functionalities of Burp. You also learn about different types of attacks. So spraying attacks, sniper attacks. It teaches you how to use the many settings that you can use when you're implementing some of these techniques. So I implore you to go and explore that module. It's super fun. And apart from the Burp Suite module, watch out for more DevSecOps content being released soon around cryptography. I hope you found today's challenge interesting. I enjoyed making this video for you so much, and good luck for tomorrow.